So squash was quite straightforward. When it came to like padel and even pickleball, there's a lot more different things that have to take place, right? Because you're playing on a turf in padel. So the outsole is very different to a squash shoe. You can't go onto a padel court with a squash shoe.
Hey everyone, welcome to Padel Smash TV. And today we have Adrian Grant, the visionary and founder of Kanso Shoes, specifically Padel Shoes. Adrian, welcome to the channel. We've been going back and forth with us for quite a while. Finally, we get a chance to meet and check out these new beautiful shoes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your paddle journey? Or how did you start with this idea about creating paddle shoes?
Or your sneaker journey, let's just say.
Yeah, so
Sneakers, yes.
my background is squash, actually. So I was a former professional squash player, originally from England. I was very fortunate to reach world number 9, won 2 world championships with England. And then as my body got old, I decided to go into a new path of coaching. And then at that time, my sponsor, which was another shoe brand called Salming, they strictly worked in squash. Thomas, who's now my partner in Kanso, and he's more the innovator of the shoes. We reconnected during COVID, and we saw this real big trend of all these individual racket sports excelling in their own right. And as you know, with all racket sports, they have similarities in movement, bilateral movement. We took the opportunity from Thomas's experience in shoe development, who has 20 years, my experience at a high level of what an athlete needs. We came together, and he has a big fascination on Japanese aesthetics, and Kanso was born. And Kanso actually means simplicity and purity in Japanese.
We're trying to figure that out.
Everyone asks that. Yeah.
So where was this? Here in the US? Where you guys...
Well, I was living in the US. It was actually during COVID, so everyone was online. We were speaking on Zoom, and he was...
Well, you have an accent. Where are you originally
England, from London. London,
okay.
England, yeah. So I've been in the US for now 10 years.
Okay, so you were playing squash there in England?
I was playing squash in England. That's where I was based, in the England camp.
Okay.
But I was playing internationally. The squash is like a kind of like the Padel Tour, it's a world tour. And then so when I retired, we moved into shoes, and it was ironic.
So moving into shoes, you said your partner was involved, or how did you kind of penetrate into that industry? What was that?
Yeah, it was just, Thomas was the CEO of another footwear brand that was specifically squash. He wanted to move forward from that. And as I said, we discovered there was a real big trend of all these racket sports that were developing in their own right. And Thomas wanted to continue developing shoes. He has, like I said, he has over 20 years experience, and that's his passion. And so we wanted to kind of broaden our horizon as opposed to just squash, but then also go into these other racket sports. Because apart from the surface of the courts, the movement itself, strictly from the movement perspective, they're very, very similar.
So you guys became partners. How did that work? Did you guys put together a business plan? Did you have to... I know he puts in the part of all the, I want to say trade secrets, but like information of how to, I guess, go through the process of acquiring sneakers, developing sneakers, R&D. I know that's his part. What did you do on your part?
So my part was more about the requirements of an athlete, right? And what the attention to detail of what's needed in terms of the specific movements.
Okay.
Like I say, it's not developing a court shoe is not easy. It's not like a running shoe where it's designed just to go in a straight line. There's so many different assets you have to, the bilateral movement, the surface, the jump in, the stop in, the start in. It's a very
So
complex...
how did you do that? Because how did you get that that research? How did you research that? We all know that, but how do you transform that into an actual shoe?
Yeah.
And did you focus on squash, creating the sneakers for squash, or was it, hey, I'm going to go into paddle, or was it, 3 segments, squash, paddle, and tennis?
It was always going to be a specific footwear brand for racket sports. Naturally, from my background, squash was entry to market.
Okay.
We only launched that in September. In the US, it came here September 2024. But from Thomas's extensive experience through footwear development and just generating multiple contacts in the industry, because we put a lot of science into the shoes as well. He was able to...
Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think our audience doesn't understand that part. What science do you put into it? What research?
Yeah,
do you
so
do?
there's
Like, how does that transform into creating a
yeah,
shoe?
we have a professor called Professor Stefan Grau. He's from Germany, and he's actually a foot biomechanist. So he looks at all the different components of the impact of where the foot takes, sorry, the impact on where you strike your feet, and everyone's foot is different.
Yeah.
That's what makes shoes such a complex thing to make.
Yeah.
It's not very easy.
Yeah.
And shoes are very personal. People with a brand, they will tend to stick to that brand. So it's like, we come with a lot of education, and a lot of our social media, and even on our website, we actually have reels of Professor Stefan Grau talking about what's needed in a shoe, and really dissects and breaks down the shoe, the complexities in a more of a less technical, so people can understand. Because even for me, in my experience, when he speaks, I'm just kind of like in awe of what he's saying.
So you acquired somebody who has years experience in the industry and was able to help you transform your ideas and your goals in a shoe into an actual physical shoe, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
so were you when you first got the shoe, was that it? It was like, okay, great. Or did you have to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, I wanted to change these things? How long did it take you to get the shoe that you wanted?
Yeah, I mean, for squash, it was pretty straightforward, again, just because of my background. And Thomas plays all racket sports as well. So when we're not coming at these sports from an outside perspective, we're ingrained in the sport itself. So squash was quite straightforward. When it came to like padel and even pickleball, there's a lot more different things that have to take place, right? Because you're playing on a turf in padel. So the outsole is very different to a squash shoe. You can't go onto a padel court with a squash shoe. You'll be slipping everywhere.
Did you get some consulting for that? Because you're a squash player and padel, I'm sure you've seen that, and that's why you want to move into that part. But did you get some consulting from somebody who plays and say this is what we're looking for, and then work again with your the professor to create that shoe for
exactly
padel?
that. So everything is based on feedback, right? And so that feedback is from people in the space, people that have a lot of credentials and have a great reputation. And it's just a lot of sampling, testing, and forward and back. And even now that we have a lot of the top athletes in our shoes in different racket sports, we still go back to them and ask for feedback. We're continually evolving.
So Adrian, going back to that, you being a high performance player, back in the day when you were playing professionally, what are the specific things that you look on a shoe when you're playing squash? Is that cushioning? Is that what is it specifically that an elite player like you was looking for it on a shoe?
Yeah, so it has to be durable. It has to be light, especially for the top athletes. They want to have that movement of that freedom of movement. But then you've got to also add, the cushioning, the stability, especially in the mid part of the foot. And then you've got the strike, right? So the heel, which strikes on the floor first, that impact goes through to the Achilles. And, people oversee these things because you're just enjoying the game. But, that causes wear and tear. So what you're trying to do is decrease that. If someone said there was a shoe that will completely eliminate any injury, that's a lie, but you're just trying to decrease that. Because again, everyone walks differently. Everyone runs differently. For me, for example, when I strike on my heel, because my ankle bone is quite tight, I actually strike on the outside and roll in.
What you call that a supination and what is it?
Pronation.
Pronation and supination. So when you hit on the side, which I do the same thing. What is that? Supination? Or?
Yeah, that's pronation.
Pronation.
Yeah.
So that means that hits on the side and then it moves.
It rolls inwards. Yeah. So you could actually see at the peak of my career, you could see if you looked at my outsole, all of this side would be worn down.
Worn down.
Yeah. So I'd have to continually change. Now that's nothing to do with the shoe. That's just me biomechanically. That's how I am.
I feel like your foot needs an alignment, like a shoe, like a car does.
Exactly.
So and going back to that. So every time I see a squash shoe, they look very thin and very minimalistic compared to a bulky tennis or paddle shoe. So what is that made that shoe so minimalistic?
So we call that like a low profile shoe. And a lot of people don't realize this, that don't play squash, that a squash court floor is actually sprung. So it's actually up off the floor. Okay. So there's space between the wood and the actual concrete floor itself. So it's actually got a spring to it. So actually when you strike, it's not as hard as obviously, playing pickleball, it's out on concrete. So it's a lot more giving, and when you go to pickleball or even padel, that can be less forgiving, right? So there's all these kind of intricate things you need to go.
And what does a paddle shoe has that is different to a squash shoe?
Yeah, so the main thing is the outsole, right? So the outsole, we have like the herringbone outsole. So that's kind of like
This is this part right
exactly.
there.
So if you look at that outsole, it's like a zigzag, and
Okay.
that actually creates the friction on the turf itself and with the sand. Some courts are obviously heavily
Yeah.
sanded. And what's unique about our one is that we have kind of like a 30-degree angle, which actually makes it self-cleansing. Because we notice,
What do you mean a 30-degree angle?
So if you see if you see here, it's kind of like at an angle rather than going straight like that. And what that does, it's actually self-cleansing. So, with you playing on the sand, you can actually get sand lodged in. And if you see like tennis players on clay courts, you'll see them knock their shoes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's the reason why they do that, right? So with this kind of self-cleansing element, it actually, naturally kind of falls out itself. Because you have to think as well, every time you're striking on the floor, when there's sand or dust, you're actually pushing in that even further.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why you see players knocking their shoe constantly.
So how important is the herringbone, the sign on the...
Massive. Absolutely
Why?
massive.
What does it do?
It's just because it creates more friction on the turf.
Okay.
On the turf. So I said, if you saw a squash shoe, it would be a lot more smoother. You wouldn't have this zigzag material because with the wood, you actually create a natural friction with that. It's not like a carpet with sand. It's a clean wood. So that's
so you went from the squash, and so how did you move into the paddle shoe? I mean, I assume you were aware of paddle. Did you see just a bigger market or a growing market? And what was that decision there?
Yeah, it wasn't so much about the market. Every racket sport has their own market, but we just saw the movements were similar, right? And we just saw that the massive key thing is the outsole. Okay. And
the outsole is the bottom part.
Yeah, is the outsole. Yeah, exactly. That's the bottom
Okay.
part. That's a huge difference. The upper, there are some things. For example, you'll see. So our pickleball shoe, it's a lot more thicker here because the drag on concrete would just tear shoes apart. Here it's not so much. Yes, it's turf, but it's a lot more giving. It's softer. And squash, you typically have a long toe drag when you lunge in because you're lunging very low. That back leg, drags level with the forward leg. So you tend to get like a lot of toe drag and wear and tear in this front part. But yeah, I mean, like I said, there are similarities in the movement.
So you have sneakers for squash, paddle, and any other racket sport?
And pickleball.
And pickleball.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? Okay, yeah, you just...
Yeah, so that. Gotcha. And what we're seeing as well, for example, racquetball. We signed the #1 racquetball player in the world. He uses the squash shoe.
Okay, so you can use squash because it's
that's
not
like an
floor,
indoor
right?
sport. So we kind of make it a lot more simple on our website. So we have indoor court, outdoor court.
So what's selling the most? The squash, paddle, or pickle?
So honestly, because we launched in 2024, and padel was only last year April. Squash has obviously been an easier route to market.
Okay.
Padel is a very emerging market.
Yeah.
With my passion, I play padel 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm hooked.
Awesome.
I'm fully
we gotta
retired.
Play one day. We gotta play.
Definitely. I'm fully retired from squash,
Okay.
and I love squash. It's given me so much. It's made me travel around the world. But it's got me in this position. If I didn't play squash, I would never have been in this position. So I'll never turn my back on squash. And I'm just a lover of all racket sports. And I tell people, you play one racket sport, you get entered into a whole family.
Yeah,
you both could feel very comfortable picking up any racket, squash racket, tennis, because you have that natural hand-eye coordination and that movement as well, right?
So how many sneakers do you have in the collection of paddle?
In padel, well, this is our new shoe. We did have just one, so we wanted to be very streamlined.
Okay.
And the one that we did have, which is still online, it was quite unique in that we had a fully foam constructed tongue. So if you see this one, it's like your standard tongue on any sneaker. Yeah. The one before the EQSC was actually a fully foam constructed tongue, so it actually fit like a glove. and it actually gave an extra layer of protection around the ankle. And that's why, we have players like Ana Cortiles and Maxi. They absolutely love that because, they're pros, they play very aggressive movement, and the ankle takes a lot of punishment for any player.
So going back to a statement that you said previously, you said that athletes are very specific. I'm also very picky on my shoes. I like that specific brand, that specific model, and I stick because it fits perfect to my foot. So when you're designing the shoe, how do you make that? Because you got to design a shoe for everybody.
Yeah.
So how do you make that happy medium balance to have the perfect shoe for everybody?
Yeah, it's hard, and if anyone could say you can't create the most perfect shoe in the world. It's as I said, everyone's foot is completely different.
Yeah.
We kind of strip it down to simplicities of like what is required in that specific sport. What type of movements do they take? What part of the body takes the most punishment? And it's not just the ankles, right? Because that impact then goes straight up to your back, to your hips. When I was a kid, I was transitioning from juniors to pros. I slipped my disc at 18. And I thought, it was due to my back. It was like, no, because you was wearing incorrect footwear. Because of the pounding that it comes straight through, because the whole body is a chain, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people they underestimate that until it's too late.
I mean, it can ruin your entire professional
100%.
career.
I mean, I was out for a year and a half.
Yeah.
I was out for a year and a half.
Did you get surgery? Because I had the same thing.
I had
surgery.
Oh, you did? I opted out.
thing.
I was 18 and I was like, I don't want to go surgery. I went for the long route.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was a year and a half in physiotherapy.
Yeah.
Trial and error. It feels good. You hit the ball and then it goes again.
So you had a herniated disc?
Yeah.
That's what I had. There's no way. For
No.
them, there's no way out of it. You just got to come and...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but you were in the cheerleading team. I mean, he was playing professional squash. So it was a bit different.
You were on it too, bro. You were the guy that would lift people.
Yeah,
so are those unisex or?
These are unisex.
Okay,
yeah,
they
these
are,
are completely unisex. And we basically try and look at like also what's trending, right? Because a lot of people get drawn to colors. A lot of people get drawn to power brands and things like that. And so what we look at, our ethos is simplicity and purity. So we go very simple, very clean, very minimal.
And you have only 2 colors, right?
We have, so this is one, and we have another 2. So I have one here. I have another one here.
The other one was yellow, wasn't it?
The other one was yellow.
Can
So
you,
that was
can you show us the other?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, but that's different. It used to be all yellow.
This is definitely for you, man.
I like it, baby.
You like that one?
100%,
We'll hook you up.
South Beach style.
This is definitely Julian's, man. There's no doubt about
I love
it.
this one.
But you'll see again on the outsole, right? So they've got
yeah.
the herringbone outsole, which is...
And this is already out.
This is out now.
And this is paddle.
This is paddle.
So quick question on the insole, because I'm very speak.
Yeah.
What is this little circle?
That's just the pivot. That's just the pivot. So as you turn, because if we continued that herringbone outsole in this pivot section, you wouldn't have as much, much pivot.
And
it's quicker.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah,
I mean,
it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Wow.
The thing is like people are so used to a certain way and a certain kind of shoe. If you took out certain elements, you would notice it. But the fact that it's there...
Well, the thing is that his age is playing flat-footed now. He used to play on the
We'll get you a pair of those.
But Adrian, sorry. Sorry.
So professional. All right, you're going to have to go back and edit this out.
So...
and let's keep this...
We'll edit that part out.
You move the focus.
Got that part out. So... Are we good?
Keep going. Yeah.
So going back to the shoes, so this is already out. Okay, is there a difference? Because every year, the Adidas change. They make it look the same, but they're not the same. So is this different to the previous one?
Yeah. So what we see is, like I said, when we came entry to market, I made a conscious decision to only bring in the EQSC, which was the fully foam integrated tongue.
Okay.
We could have released one like a normal tongue like that, but then I just felt like being new to the sport, you're just going to blend in with everyone else. We wanted to have some unique selling points and something that stands out. Now we're in year 2, we've now started to introduce, the tongues and things like that. But on this one specifically, you'll see these parts here. This is like increased mesh. This one makes it more breathable. And this one is very popular in Miami, by the way, because of weather conditions. They love that. And this one is like your more traditional shoe. And, that's actually quite loud for us in terms of colors. we go very simple, very minimal. We don't try to confuse things and clutter things. We just want to say how it is. Keep it very high.
And why these colors?
We just kind of felt like that's where that will give it a bit more bite on court. Like for example,
I love that it's different. You know what it is.
And we try and do everything for everyone. White is always going to be the staple color.
Classic.
It's a classic. That's never going to go out. And then you can go be a bit more risque with adding a bit more colors, and it's just getting data, right? Market feedback and understanding what people like. And look, you're never going to satisfy everyone. It's impossible. And so we just make sure that the innovation in the shoe is correct because.
So you said you had a third shoe.
Yeah, so I have a third shoe. I actually just gave that to Maxi. We just had a campaign shoe. Okay. But
I is that similar to that, or is it totally different?
No, so you see the yellow one that's online? Yeah. It's that exact same shoe, but it's a nice blue. It's a really nice blue.
Is that for 2026, the blue?
That's out now as well. That's out now. We just did a campaign shoot with Maxi and Anna, and Maxi loves that shoe. And again, with that shoe, it was just intricate detail. So if you look online now, we have a yellow and white. What we found visually on TV, so we have like Julia Polo wearing our shoes, that the logo wasn't really standing out. The TV couldn't catch it because these guys are moving so fast. And with Maxi's shoe now, it's blue, but the logo is white, so it really pops out. And what we discovered with this shoe, by chance, is when we was doing the photo campaign, just with the trim gold around, that pops out as well.
Reflects the light.
It reflects, exactly. Yeah. So, when it comes to marketing, people know, like a Nike tick, right? As soon as you see it, you just know it instantly. So,
go ahead, keep going.
No, so that's what we wanted to make sure going into this second line, that our logo pops out because, as I said, it's a unique logo. It's very Japanese infused.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned Japanese a couple of times. Yeah. What does that mean? Is that where the product is made, or is that where your influence and creating a shoe? Yeah. So again,
my partner Thomas, he really liked the aesthetics of Japanese culture. Okay. The kind of the simple way of life. And that's what we wanted to body in all of our footwear. Just keep it simple and pure. And not go crazy on innovation showing in the shoe, on the shoe. Mm-hmm. We don't have crazy things on the laces or anything like that, but the innovation is inside the shoe. And, that's why this year we've been very big on the educational side, because I've noticed just with like a lot of sports that are trending, people gravitating to a new sport is great, but no one really knows like, okay, what do I need to wear? Yeah. And I've done the same, I just pick up the first pair of shoes by my front door, go on court, and you will get away with it a couple of times, but we all want the sport to grow. We want everyone to come in. The last thing we want is people wearing incorrect equipment and getting injured and being like, I'm never playing again. And I say that, footwear is actually the most important, even more important than the racket, because
that's what we tell everybody.
Yeah.
The shoes and the racket. I don't care how you dress, but the shoes are so important because without having good shoes, your feet are going to hurt. You can injure yourself. And the racket, same thing.
Especially when you get older and older.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the price point of these shoes? Do they have different price points?
Yeah, so they're different price points. So they range from, we have one at 140, 150 and 170.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, what we do is, obviously the 140 still has innovation, but it's got less, and we're very price conscious in terms of, we don't want to burn everyone out, especially the people that are just coming into the sport, but they also know that they still need, correct footwear at the end of the day. And so that's what we try and...
Okay, so let's move in a little bit to the business part. I know you partnered up with your partner. Did you guys bootstrap this thing? And do you guys have a brick and mortar place here? And are you guys a B2B or B2C or both?
Yeah, so we don't have brick and mortar. We're actually... I'm going to take that back. We have a pop-up brick and mortar next week in New York. So there's a new Padel magazine called Padel Mag, and they've just created this first pop-up store ever in New York, and it's right in the heart of the shopping district. So it's actually in between Apple and Nike, so it's in a prime location. It's going to be open for 10 days, and Kanso are going to be the only footwear brand there, but there'll be other brands like Adidas, Babolat, Knox will be there as well. And it's kind of like a real celebration of the game. We sell online, And then we just partner with clubs. You know, we're very
So you're B2C online,
yeah,
and then B2B to clubs and like retailers, or
and retailers as well.
have you tried to get into any of the big retailer?
Yeah, I mean,
facilities?
we're starting to work with a lot of the retailers now. I've kind of taken this kind of approach of, you know, for me, relationships are very, very important.
Mhm.
You know, we didn't want to be a brand that's just on the wall.
Mhm.
There's so much products out there these days. It's too much choice.
There is, yeah.
It's too much choice. So I'm very conscious of, you know, like, can we align in the same direction? You know, just having a shoe or any product just sat there on the wall is just not going to work in this day and age.
I was
you know?
going to ask you that because a lot of these companies have already moved into this space, like Babolat, Knox, and you
Yeah.
got Wilson, even Head, and some of these people have like roots here in the USA. So how are you gonna compete with that and those
Yeah.
deep pockets that they
Yeah,
have?
yeah, definitely. I mean, what we've seen work so far is the educational component. And so we provide a lot of educational material with our partners, which then they translate that to their community and just educating them on specific footwear for that sport.
How do you do that? How do you
So we do that with either videos, with reels from myself, with my partner.
So on social media.
On social media, we can personalize it to that specific club. Stuff from Professor Stefan Grau. But then also when I approach clubs, you know, I understand fully the trials and tribulations a pro shop has: space, inventory, sizing, all of those things. So we go into this space of like not one size fits all, excuse the pun, and it's okay, what do you need to make it work for you?
So the thing is, the clubs, because I own a club in Connecticut, so the clubs, their main focus is on the courts and selling, you know, the rental courts. They usually don't have like a sales force to properly push their pro shop. And rackets, that's fine, but sneakers, it's like there's many sizes.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like you have a lot of stock and you have a lot of stock just sitting there.
Yeah.
How do you get around that? I mean, I've always had an issue with that too. You know, so how do you get that in the clubs? You do like a drop shipping? Do you do like
so
something
we've done again.
with
We've done multiple different models for different clubs because they all have different needs. We've done the drop shipping model, and they look at it as, okay, when we reach a certain threshold, then it makes sense to invest. There's clubs that are starting to build, and so they don't even have a community right now, and so we even work with them in terms of like helping them build a credible partnership, helping them create a lot of marketing information to customers to draw them in. And, you know, these partnerships that we have, we're in it for life. You know, we say, you know, there's some partnerships that we have that don't even buy from us directly straight away. Like, can you come in and do an activation? We come in and actually come in and speak to the community and tell them the importance of the shoe.
That's
you know, and what I've noticed, there's so much investment going into the game, not just in padel, but in a lot of sports. And that's great for the game. But I say to clubs, I'm like, look, it's your responsibility for you to build your community, right? And we all want the game to grow. The last thing you need is your members being injured, because it affects the whole ecosystem, right? And so people don't really pay much attention to that until I kind of explain it. And that's it. It actually affects your whole business. You know, we're trying to get people to come into the game. The last thing we want is people coming out of the game playing a couple of times because of an injury due to incorrect footwear or racket, you know. And
so do you have a warehouse here in the USA?
Yeah, we have a warehouse.
Oh, okay.
So our warehouse is in Texas.
Okay.
So it's a nice spot to go east or west.
So how do you determine how much stock do you need? I mean, that's a kind of a tough one, you know what I'm saying? You're always on edge. You don't have too much stock, but you want to have enough. It's like, how do you determine that? I mean, you don't have that much data. You just kind of been a year and a half. So how do you do that?
That's always, I think that's always going to be like the thorn in my side of like really, because you're basically forecasting, right? And you're what partnerships do we have? What ambassadors do we have? Like, how are they going to promote it? How big are their audience and all these things? So you're kind of forecasting, but the first kind of 2 years is really tough. You know, when we launched last year, April, it went really well. Then all of a sudden we've got these players coming on and people are like, you haven't got my size anymore. I'm like, oh no. And then we're having to kind of, you know, put that in the data and then order more come next time. So And you have to take in consideration when the off season is.
Mhm.
I know in Miami you're very fortunate to have great weather most of the time of the year, but an example like squash, the off season is in the summer. So you're trying to dictate for the rest of those 9 months of like, what sizes are selling,
Right.
where are they selling?
That's a good
And
question. What sizes do sell? I always wonder what's
Well,
for
in
men and women.
yeah, so in Padel we see like from your sizes 7 and up.
Okay.
7 and up. I mean,
in men's.
in men's, yeah.
And women?
And the women's is probably like 5 and upwards.
5 and up.
5 and up.
And
yeah.
out of those, usually it's seven in the men's 7 to 11.
Mhm.
Out of those, what is it? Between 9 and 10 are the ones that sell the most, or
I would say 9 and 10s, yeah, they sell the most. I mean, I had a couple of people, when we first saw them saying, "Why have you not got a size 14?" And I'm like, I didn't even know that existed. So, and people don't realize, when you start going up to that size, you actually have to create a brand new mold.
It's like 2 shoes.
It's
almost.
like exactly. You have to create a brand new mold,
Yeah.
which is another huge investment.
yeah.
And I don't know whether that's financially, if there's a
Makes
good
sense.
enough return.
Yeah, how many
So
size
how-
14s you have in the
How
world?
big of a shoe can you make with the mold that you have? What's typical, like
So we can go up to
11,
we
12?
can go up to 12.
12,
Yeah, we can go
12.
up to 12.
Now I see that you're investing in sponsoring coaches and players here.
Mhm.
What are your expectations from them?
Yes, that's a good question. So, we look at them
And their
as
job description as well. What are they supposed to do for the brand?
yeah. So we just we are
Mhm.
very selective in who we work with in terms of they have to be a great person, and like I said, we're very big on relationship, and passionate about the brand and its DNA. We don't want a person that's kind of like wearing the shoes and just not really doing anything, or we're not asking for a salesman. We're not expecting you to coach your clients and then say, hey, buy
but
the
at
shoes.
the end of the day, you want to get return on your investment.
We want
right?
to get a
So-
return, yeah, exactly. And for us, it's obviously social media is big. We've worked with some coaches that their pro shop didn't want to touch shoes, any shoe, but then as soon as their pro is wearing the shoes, and the customers see the pro is always engaging with the customer. They always go to the pro and ask, what should I buy?
So the goal is exposure, because I mean, yeah, you do social media, but they're usually at clubs. They got a limited exposure in the area, but it's really then exposure on social media. Are they
No,
supposed
I
to
mean,
market it there?
I'm very old school. I appreciate the digital age is huge, but I'm very big on human connection. So me as a CEO, I actually go to clubs myself. I actually shake people's hands. I actually play with customers, because even their feedback and just hearing them speak and what they want, what they don't want, that's massive data for me.
Yeah.
I say to everyone, I don't sit in an office on my laptop, punching numbers. I'm actually on the court and I'm actually engaging with people.
So it's data and information that you're
Yeah.
looking for a little bit,
Because
not
they're-
necessarily a return or anything.
No,
or
they're
like-
the most important people. We would not be here without the community. I would not be here. I would not have a business without the community. They are the backbone of any sport, right? And so I think that has to be treated fairly. That has to be respected, and that you have to give back to them, because they're the people. They're the people that are buying the products. They're the people that you want to support. And there's no better feeling than someone coming to me and saying, "Oh, I've worn your shoes and it's done this for me." That's our goal.
Okay.
That's it.
So I totally agree with that. So with us, and this interview, your audience is going to become global.
Mm.
How's that distribution globally? I mean, it's great for the American market, but let's say we have audience literally all over the world.
Mm.
Are you doing globally shipping? I mean, how do you handle that
It's a
part?
good question. I think what you're saying is we're just not focusing USA, because there's only a little over 100,000 players here, and we have pretty much a majority of them. But there's hot spots. UK is definitely hot for battle.
Yeah.
You have India, you have
Yeah.
Indonesia, you have UK. You have some hot spots there that we have an audience in.
Mm.
So are you just focused on the UK and the US, or are you prepared really to focus outside of that?
No,
Or where's your next area that you're
We're
thinking?
global. We're global.
You
We have
are? Okay.
distribution
So
all around the
you're
world.
willing to ship worldwide?
Well, we
anywhere?
have distributors in UK, in Spain, in South America. We have distribution globally.
How about the Eastern, the Middle East or the Asia?
Middle East,
How
we're
about
still
Asia?
working on, like Dubai's becoming a bit of a hotbed there.
Yeah.
We have partnered up with distributors in Asia.
Okay.
Europe, we've got that covered.
Okay.
Outsole, US is a huge market. I mean, it's massive. And people forget that we're not just doing padel, we're doing all sports. And when you combine those, it's probably the biggest in the world, to be honest.
And right now, the America is your number one market, or you?
I would say, I would definitely, because pickleball is obviously huge here.
Yeah.
It's not very big in other places in the world, and UK is good for us at the moment. Spain is starting to get a lot of legs. It's very competitive there, as you know.
Yeah.
It's a hotbed, and you're competing against legacy brands. Babolat have been there from the very first day. Wilson, exactly. And I say that I see areas which I'm doing that I know the power brands are not going to be doing. And so that's our space. When I first came into this, people like straight away, you're crazy. It's this and but I'm like, it's not crazy if you've done your research and you're prepared to do the work. It's not crazy because the market is growing. Like the market is growing, so there is space. And I have noticed areas which have been very successful for us, and which again from feedback from people that other brands or whatever aren't doing, and that's fine. And so I would be silly to go in and try and compete with them financially right now, because it's not going to happen. Maybe one day, but
okay. So going back to that specific question, so why don't you tell our audience, on video and also on our podcast, why should they buy this shoe? What like you said, why should they buy Kanso instead of an Adidas or an Asics or anything else? What is your selling point on this shoe?
Yeah, I mean, look, I said before, our DNA is racket sports, right? And so we've built this from the ground up. We specifically work in racket sports. We don't go into basketball, soccer. Our success is our partner's success. And so we want to see all of these racket sports evolve, develop, grow. And our background is racket sports. As I said, I'm 45 now. And then I played racket sports from the age of 8. And I still do. And I'm fully embedded within the community. We work specifically for those sports. We do strictly footwear. We're not trying to be everything for everyone. We're not having rackets or anything like that. We have accessories, bags, just to complement the footwear. But footwear is not an easy thing to make, as I said before, and that's why a lot of people don't really go into it.
Wait, let me just add one more follow to that question. So, what are the specific specs of the paddle shoe? Why people should buy this paddle shoe? What are the key metrics of the shoe?
The key things are obviously the self-cleansing herringbone outsole that we mentioned. We always get data from our athletes. We are humble in when we build our shoes. No matter how much success we have, data is golden. And that gold comes from the community. That gold comes from the pro players, because they're the ones who are in the field every single day. The demands that they need, the shoe is built from their demands. When we speak to Anna, she can quote me on this and you can quote her on that. She says the best shoe she's ever used. Okay. And that's from her words, not from ours, which is amazing. That's just one person. For us, it's about the whole community, right? And so every single shoe that we have is specifically designed for that sport. As I said, you cannot take this onto a squash court. And we say that. Do not take this onto a squash court. Do not take this onto a pickleball court. This is strictly for padel. And we're very, very specific in that. And
so what's next for Kanso? Are they going to introduce other things, besides the sneaker? I know it's like your sneakers, but apparel, socks, what else are you guys going to do maybe in 2027? What's going up in that mind thinking, okay, I see, we're selling sneakers, but I see a little area here where we can move into.
Well, I see the hoodie, I see the shirt, I see the bag. I mean, there are things on the pipeline.
There's things in the pipeline. I'm not able to say there's something big. There's something big happening
Come
next year.
on.
Okay.
I will get shot if this happens if I say this. But when it can, you'll be the first to know. I promise you
Okay.
that. That's my word. It's on camera. But
Well, you send it to us and we'll do like
We'll definitely let you know. You'll be the first, and something big's gonna working on something big. But aside from that, I'm personally working on something here in the US in terms of just kind of bringing the community together more and giving the space of performance. I'm very big on performance through my upbringing, and I know that the average person might not have any interest in performance, but I truly believe for us and the sport to grow, people, even at a recreational level, they want to feel a self-sense of improvement, right? Because if you're just staggered at the same level, there's only so much of a beating you're going to take, right? And I'm not saying you're trying to be the world number one, but even if you can move better, even if you can hit that ball earlier, all of those small improvements are going to elevate people and make them play more.
So we have a routine at the end of the interview. A few things. Where can they buy this shoe right now for our audience?
So the easiest place is online, which is kansosports.us.
Okay.
We will have the new collection on there by Monday. They just arrived. We had delays due to the unfortunate things that are going on around the world. We had delays with shipment, but they are here in our warehouse. We're just stocking them up now. So you can go online and purchase those now. We provide free shipping for every shoe that's
regardless if it's one pair, two pairs.
Regardless whether it's one pair, two pair, 10 pairs.
Anywhere in the US or
anywhere
in the world?
Anywhere in the US from Kanso Sports US. But wherever you are in the world, you only have to put Kanso Sports in Google and it will take you to that region of where you are, right? So, but yeah.
And another thing, now that you're here, are you offering, because we get DMs all the time, are you guys giving any discounts on this specific podcast, and what will be the call to action?
Well, because you put me on the spot and you didn't prepare me for that. I like that one. I should have done my research. We will do something. I will have a look.
Okay.
And I promise everyone we will do something specifically for your audience.
Okay, so stay tuned because we're gonna give a huge, beautiful discount or promo promo code for you guys to get your hands on these beautiful Kanso shoes.
Yes.
So
and you will get it by the end of today. I'll text you guys and okay, this is what we'll do. But like I said, I love what you guys are doing. I think it's amazing. I think part of the community. Say without you guys, people won't even be aware of what's going on, right? And that's the power of digital presence right now.
Thank you so much, Adrian. What a great pleasure having you here. We can't wait to really put our shoes,
our feet,
on our feet, and then give them a try and give us our give your feedback too.
Adrian, congratulations,
Thank
man.
you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.